Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update regarding the Donald Trump tariffs situation. Trump says right now the tariffs on Canada and Mexico will be going forward next week. I believe the exact date is March 4th when the tariffs are scheduled to happen. There was a month delay in the tariffs. Trump was going to tariff both Canada and Mexico 25%. Canada and Mexico can't afford that considering their reliance on U.S. companies buying their product. And so they both caved in to Donald Trump, and then liberals tried spinning it and saying, well, no, they were already going to do those certain things. No, there was an agreement by Mexico to send troops to the border, but they hadn't done it yet. Trump got them to immediately act. That's what Trump's been using these tariffs as. It's a bullying maneuver against smaller countries to force them into action. And then the situation with Canada, admittedly, even for me, was a bit strange. The emphasis Trump put on fentanyl and stuff, when you look at the numbers, it's really not a dire situation when it comes to the Canadian border. Fentanyl coming across Mexico is a completely different story, of course. But you have to wonder when it comes to certain things. I mean, Trump is very unpredictable when it comes to these tariffs, I'll be honest. It's hard to really get a gauge on exactly what he wants to do. You could say, based off, and we're going to read through this article, that Trump potentially is looking to get or extract something else out of Canada and Mexico to potentially ward off these tariffs if they decide to agree to something, because Trump has to know the tariffs are negatively going to affect the stock market, and he certainly does care about that. And stocks are not off to an amazing start under his presidency. Now, I'm sure they will improve. That's the whole thing with these liberals saying, oh, it's everything's so down, prices are up, the stock market's down. Well, yeah, he's been in office for about a month. This is the Biden administration. This is their doing. There's a lag effect. Even if Trump put good things into place right now and he's already done it, it's a lag. It takes time. It doesn't just immediately get better overnight. It's a process. But let's see this. We've got U.S. President Donald Trump said tariffs scheduled to hit Canada and Mexico next month were on time and moving along very rapidly following an initial delay, even as a U.S. official cautioned the schedule could be less certain. So they're already saying, well, maybe. My guess is there's potential stipulations here that could delay them again when it comes to this situation with Mexico and Canada. I do think Trump thinks the United States is certainly getting taken advantage of when it comes to Mexico and Canada. But the bottom line is, yes, trade wars can be brutal, but if a trade war breaks out between the United States and Canada, between the United States and Mexico, the United States would win the trade war 100 times out of 100. The argument against it is, well, nobody wins in a trade war. The longer the trade war would go on, the more it would strain the smaller countries, Canada and Mexico. Trump was asked if tariffs, which he delayed until March 4th, would go into effect next week as he fielded questions. He was meeting with the French President Macron earlier today at the White House. Canada and Mexico did implement new border measures. Absolutely, they did. That was the whole thing with the liberal spin. Oh, they didn't do anything. They were already going to do it. No, Trump forced their hand to do it quicker. That's the point of these tariffs. You bully smaller countries by proxy because the United States has a much bigger economy. And it's and they're like, oh, you're forming bad relationships by doing this and bullying these other countries. The relationship with Canada and Mexico, it's irrelevant whether the United States treats them badly or not. They don't have the military to do anything against the United States based off of where they're located anyways. So it's irrelevant. So you can bully these countries into doing certain things. And that's really what Trump did with his maneuver last month, where the tariffs were going to go into place. And then there was a deal done by both Canada and Mexico. And you have to wonder, is there going to be a potential another one, at least according to this U.S. official here we're going to see down here. But Trump saying the tariffs are going forward on time and on schedule. That's what Trump said in response to the question about what's going to be happening with them on March 4th. But you do have remarks from a U.S. official. The official basically said the tariffs, whether or not they'll be the 25%, are still to be determined. So we're not sure if that is still the tariff that's going to be placed on these countries. But he did confirm that the reciprocal tariffs that could hit all countries, including Canada and Mexico, will be going forward in April. And you've got Trump saying our country will be extremely liquid and rich again. So the question here is, Trump delays the tariffs a month. Does he go forward with them now on March 4th? We know Canada and Mexico, huge trading partners, number one and number two with the United States. Or is this a situation to where Trump tries to get something again from the Canadians and the Mexicans to delay the tariffs? And would Canada and Mexico agree to it, what would the ask be? I would assume all of this is still in relation to the North American trade deal that the US, Canada, and Mexico has. And yes, there is a review on that trade deal in 2026. So a year from now. But you have to wonder in terms of these tariffs, Trump has said he wants to use the tariffs to basically allow there to be no state income tax. And so if you're going to do that, there needs to be tariffs, certainly against both Canada and Mexico, because they are big trading partners. You need to generate a lot of revenue for the U.S. government if you want to take away the state income tax, which generates around $2 trillion. But again, it was a little bit strange, the situation with Canada in particular. And to me, that's a little bit different than Mexico, because Mexico, Trump wants to do certain special operations there, which is a potential removal of some of the big cartels. How do you do that? It's unknown. Whether you try and cut the head off the snake with the cartel leaders or go after the cartels with potential targeted airstrikes, we're unsure. But I do think Trump is probably going to do something like that later in his term. That's the situation with Mexico. But with Canada, I mean, the whole 51st state thing is hard to gauge, because Trump has said he's serious about it. He wants it to happen. And the idea would be you would go full-fledged hard tariffs against Canada, and then you would offer them a lifeline. You create a dire situation in the country, because right now, really the Canadians do not want to join the United States. They just don't. They have this viewpoint of, we hate Trump, this is terrible. They are a lot more liberal than the United States, but the question is, you can force their economy to tank and basically bully them into submission through economic warfare, which is what Trump had said he was going to do. He said there's going to be no troops with Canada. We'll take them over through the economic situation, which is basically launching huge tariffs against Canada. They'll do tariffs back against us, but they would get crushed. That's if Trump wants to be really aggressive. And then Trump gives the Canadians a lifeline and says, you can join the United States. You can be a territory. You can do the 1-for-1 Canadian dollar USD exchange. That would be that strategy. Would Trump still want to do something like that, considering he's referenced the 51st state idea many times? To me, this seems like Trump wants extremely cheap trade with both Canada and Mexico. And the reason he wants that is because of how powerful the United States is in comparison to those countries. In essence, if the United States really wanted extremely cheap, and we already do have a good trade deal with the countries, but if we wanted it for basically free, we could get it for free through military force, which is not something you want to do. So Trump is going the more peaceful route with economic force, and the way you do that is through tariffs. But again, maybe these won't even go into effect. We don't know. Maybe Trump is going to try and extort these countries for something else. He wanted them to secure their borders. He wanted Mexico to commit troops. They did that. And by the way, again, there was like, oh, it was agreed upon Biden. Well, no, they had already done a deal with Biden where they would put troops on the border. That was back in like 2022. This is an entirely new thing that Trump's gotten. They tried spinning it like it was already something that was going to be happening under Biden. It's not true at all. But when it comes to, I will agree that the Canada situation was a bit odd. Talking about fentanyl, when you look at the border situation with fentanyl in Canada, it doesn't make a ton of sense to threaten them like that over fentanyl coming in through Canada. Not to say it doesn't happen, but just in general, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. That's why I think there's something else going on with Canada. And we've heard about Trump mention the whole idea of the 51st state. The Canadians don't want it, but they may have no choice depending on if Trump goes really hard against Canada in terms of the tariffs. Those companies need, or the companies within Canada that produce goods for the United States, they need U.S. buying from them. It's like a 75-25 exchange. They're reliant on us more so than we are of them. And that's, I mean, you can understand that's very obvious considering our population and how big our economy is versus Canada. And also based on the fact that we border Canada. So the trade is going to be very easy between both of the countries. And that's kind of why you see this liberal rhetoric coming out of Canada, to where they're like, we need to give up on the United States and trade with other countries. That's what they've been saying recently. And so we will have to see what Trump ends up doing with these tariffs. But right now they're scheduled to go in place. We don't know if it's going to be the 25%. The U.S. official said maybe, we'll see. But right now the tariffs are scheduled to go into place on March 4th. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.